Welcome to Bitcoin Escape Plan. We've got a really exciting video today. We've hit a couple very key levels on the chart that you're not going to want to miss. Please feel free to leave a comment down below if you have any questions about this analysis. And at the end of the video today, I will go over my recent short trades. I'm very, very happy about those. So make sure you watch to the end of the video if you're curious about that. As always, we're going to start off on the 4-hour time frame just so we get an accurate picture of the short-term momentum for Bitcoin. But before we do that, if you are new here, go over to bitcoinescapeplan.com. If you put in your email, you'll get these directly to you every week. Just the key levels that are important to pay attention to. And if you have no clue who I am, check out my 2025 Bitcoin analysis report, just so you can see whether or not it's worth listening to me talk. All right, bitcoinescapeplan.com, go check it out. Back to the 4-hour chart for Bitcoin. All right, so a bunch of key things just happened. So if you're a follower of this channel already, you know I've been talking about 73.8K for how many weeks now? Where do we top? Right at 74K. I don't even know. I feel like I've been talking about that since December, like January. Very, very long time. Super important that we made it back to that range. I don't think that we are done here, but it was important just to see how the price reacted to that level. This right here is a downtrend anchored VWAP that I have set from the all-time high at 126.2K. We just interacted with it for the first time, I believe, since January. So this is a telling signal for us as well that we're going to have some short-term bullish momentum potentially if we are able to reclaim that level. And then this guy over here is the middle band of the broader anchor VWAP, the elder VWAP, as I like to call it, that I have drawn from 2011 to here. And as you can see, earlier in March, we broke above it and are currently trying to decide, do we need to retest it now or not? So it'll kind of act as support if we're able to close above that. What I'm looking for at the moment, and this is my trading decision as well, this guy right here, this is the bottom of the Bollinger Band at the moment. It is most likely that that is what we're going to interact with next. It's more likely that we're going to interact with the bottom one than the top one, as you can see, just by the general trend. So right there, what are the key levels that we have? These are daily levels. I actually got rid of all my weekly and monthly levels. I'll redraw them eventually, but 69K, important psychologically because of the 2021 all-time high, and then 73.8K, also very important because that was the March 2024 IBIT peak in the early halving year. Very, very important. Both of those basically between 69K and 73.4 or 73.8K is where we're going to want to see support form to continue moving on upward from this level. So currently we're at 68.2. We'll have a 4-hour candle close in about 50 minutes from when I'm recording this video. This one at the moment, because we are below this Fibonacci pivot, probably temporarily still going to act bearish, even though we have, if we close it right now and there's still 50 minutes to go, if we close it above the wick of this candle, technically it's like undecided essentially. Volume wise, still definitely more bearish. But we will see a floor start to pick up around this 70 or 67.7 and 67 range. We already have a decent amount of volume there. So me currently, before I have my next trade set up, that's what I'm looking for, is a reaction around 67K. I wouldn't expect it goes lower than that, but I'll know at that time because our 4-hour SMA will have started rounding and dropping. Our Bollinger Band as well will start to expand that way instead of compressing inward towards it. And we are above multiple trend lines at the moment, including both the downtrend as well as the uptrend. So price looks good, honestly. Like there's not really much to say about it. I am still of the opinion that it is not going to new all-time highs. I've said that multiple times, and I'll go over that once we get to the higher time frame. But in the short term, it looks good. I would be looking for a reaction to 67-ish for more bullish momentum. And then it's just going to be the same thing. It's going to be how does it react to 69 on the way back up to it? And how does it react to 70.75 as well as 73.6K? And again, you can call that 73.8. That's I think that's the more relevant one. And even the candle closes at 73.7. So clearly price wants confirmation of 73.8, which again, I've been saying since, I don't know, fucking December or January, long time. So that's short-term momentum. Let's go to the broader term. This is the monthly chart. Clean her up a little bit. Pretty much same story is true that we've been talking about. So we did close February, slightly above, not quite at the 50% mark between this range here. So it's still more downside pressure than upside pressure, more likely that we are going to see a retest of 64 than otherwise. But it's quite possible, as I just said, that if we see strength at 67, that we're not going to need to see a 64 in this month, which would actually give credence for that other theory that we've been talking about of us rising to this 76.2K pivot, maybe not breaking it in March, maybe just getting to it sufficient enough. Like if we can get to 75, 76 and close right around there at the month, or if we spike above it but still close right next to it, that will put more pressure to go towards, again, as I've talked about it on the weekly time frame, I would say 80K is what we're looking for. It's an older Fibonacci pivot. It's not reading right now as important, but 80K is going to form as either resistance or support, depending on where this weekly SMA drops down to. So we have to wait till Sunday, obviously, for us to get the weekly close. But that's whenever that goes, it's just going to pull this weekly SMA down lower, probably to about 84. And like I said, by the time that we interact with 76.2, say that takes us, say we end the week at the 50% mark of this range, or that's slightly above it. It's probably like right here, which is lower than we currently are. So even if we close there, that'll put more pressure in the next week or two back towards that 76.2K pivot. If we can show strength there, again, by that time, this weekly SMA will probably be at 84 or 82K. And if it's still above the 80K pivot by the time that we interact with it, then technically we may have enough room to run before an interaction with it. But this is where it kind of gets a little bit squirrely, because I've been talking about it since January that I think this 96K pivot is something we're going to retest, but I don't really think so. If the weekly SMA gets this low, I don't think that it's very likely that we're going to get high above it. You know, like if we go back historically and take a look at previous cycles, when we did have that retest, it did not stay above it for very long. It stayed above it for 3 weeks, and then it continued to stay below it for an extended period of time. This is almost identical too. This is 47.6K times 2 is like almost exactly that 96K pivot, just below that 96K pivot. So it's literally just double that time. And we've seen almost identical price movement as well. The difference being we saw this peak in January, not December. And then we saw this breakdown in February, not January, and then have started to rise at the start of March, pretty much the same way, you know, very similar to the same way. Again, the only difference being this peak in February was a little bit earlier, and then we had our drop, but very, very similar to 2022 at the moment, which is why I initially thought we were going to interact with this weekly SMA and hit that 96K pivot before then breaking downward. However, as I just explained, for where we are currently, as you can see up here, the weekly SMA is very high, pretty close to that 96K or the 47.6K pivot rather. And we're very far from this bottom of the range. We didn't touch this bottom of the range as opposed to here, which again, what is 2 times 31.8? Pretty much exactly 64K. Bitcoin is math. I don't know why people think that it's just money. It's math. Like, you need to be able to understand this when you're looking at the chart if you plan to make any money with it. This is not financial advice. I'm just telling you how it works. So we did break through that pivot in this instance. Again, think about that as the 31.8K pivot in the 2022 cycle, which means we are weaker than we were over there. The weekly SMA here, again, this is the 48.6K pivot or 47.6K pivot times 2, 96K. The weekly SMA, when we interacted with it with the price, was around here in relation to that 96K pivot. As opposed to, again, what I believe is going to happen over the next 2-3 weeks is this weekly SMA is going to get pulled down, which means our reaction is going to be more similar to how price got to the weekly SMA, pushed right through it, and then failed at that Fibonacci pivot. And I think it's just going to be the inverse this time, where price is going to get through that Fibonacci pivot and then likely fail the weekly SMA. Whether it gets above it for a couple of weeks or not, I don't think it's going to get past this 50% retracement mark of this range here, which would be, as I've said, about 84K, maybe 86, but I would expect at that 50% mark of that range that the price would begin to fail at that point. Which it is what it is. You know, that's just the reality. You can argue against that. That's what the historical analysis tells us. For everyone who like gives me comments on threads about like, oh, is this news event? It's this news event. Like, that's good. I'm very happy for you. Like, I can say what's going to happen on the chart and it happens. I don't care what the news event is that it appears to be. Most of the time, I am able to see just based on the historical analysis, and I'm literally using a free version of TradingView. I have volume set up and 2 other complicated indicators, and that's it. That's all that I'm using besides my own personal knowledge of Bitcoin to be able to make these analyses. And anyone can do it. That's the point of this channel, is I want to educate you. So again, please feel free to leave comments down below if you have any questions about anything, my indicators, the key levels, whatever you want, let me know. So that's what we're looking for at the moment, is do we close this week on Sunday above the 50% mark of this range that we're in, which again is probably right around here, call it 70.2K. What is 70.2K? Oh, that's a Fibonacci pivot on the daily time frame that we've talked about 1.5 million times. So we would want a close above that. If we can get a close above that, that gives us credence for trying again to make another push for that 76.2K pivot. And all the while, that weekly SMA is going to continue to get pulled downward, and it will act as resistance, not support, I think. Although we probably will push right past the 76.2K pivot at that time, as opposed to experiencing that as significant resistance. I just don't think that we make our way to that 96K pivot. And if I'm wrong, then technically I was right, because I've been talking about that since December. So it is what it is. Before we get into the trades, I'll go over the daily time frame real quick. It is pretty important what's happening right now. So we've been below it since January for a long time. We have retested it as of the end of February. You can see we chopped around it for basically a whole week at the end of February into early March. And we are now presently just barely touching it. We're having a reaction to it today. So we have dropped down as low as 67.7, which I believe is exactly what I said to look at earlier today on Threads. And we're currently waiting to see the reaction to that before we can move forward. I think it must have dropped a lot since I've been speaking. I did not see that momentum earlier in the candle. Anyways, so that's what we're looking for at the moment, is if the price can close back above 68.7K today on the daily, that's a bullish signal. That puts us back in the likelihood that we're going to go higher. And again, at the moment, it's saying the low is 76.7. which is pretty close to our Bollinger Band here. That's right around at 70 or 67. That's what we want to be looking for, again, for the cleanest next long entry. So me personally, that's what I'm looking for. All right, well, we're back on the 4 hour, so I'll go over my recent trade. So I talked to you already about my Monday trade. I took this one. I got stopped out on my first one because I started trading this literally with $100. Just because like I want to learn from the absolute like lowest level, so I can make all the mistakes, so I can answer more questions for you guys. And I'm trading Nano BTC perpetual futures contracts on Coinbase. And yes, I do live in the US, and yes, you are able to do it. This strategy also would work anywhere else, if you're using Bybit, Femex, BitUnix, or whatever, anywhere that you can trade with leverage, this would work. Technically, you can do it with spot as well, but you need a lot of money with spot in order to be able to do this properly, and you can still only get one side of the trade. Anyways, so I took that initial one, got stopped out, got back in a little bit later than I would want to. To briefly go over my strategy again, I'm looking for entries solely based on the 4 hour candle breaks. Why the 4 hour candle breaks? They're much less frequent than on the lower time frames and on the higher time frames. Well, actually not the weekly and monthly. The weekly and monthly, it doesn't hit very often. You'd be taking 2 trades a year if you were like only going based on those entries, which if you have a ton of money, that's a great life. But the daily, I don't think is quite as reliable. Still very good. I mean, still definitely worth taking entries off of it. But like these guys, you would have been fucked if you were taking longs at that time. Whereas the 4 hour during that time was a little bit more clear. or you could just see it happening, like, oh, okay, we failed this pivot, we failed this pivot. I don't currently have a rule set for when we are descending or ascending, taking the flip side of the trade, because again, on the bottom of the Bollinger Band, typically you would want to take a long, but obviously this is telling you to short it. So I'm still, basically I'm using the Fibonacci pivots and the SMA part of the Bollinger Bands to give me information about exit points, and I'm trying to refine how they come into entry points, because quite frankly, I'm content with just taking a couple trades every couple days. I don't have to take a trade every single day. I would like to get good enough that I am able to do that, but I'm looking for A+ setups, which are typically candle closes outside of the 4-hour Bollinger Band, either to the upside or the downside. Slightly less good than that is wicks outside to the upside or downside. And then when I took this trade initially, I took it because of the failure of this Fibonacci pivot. And I closed that trade right around when we touched the 4-hour SMA. That one was pretty good. I think I made like 18.7% on that, which is pretty good for the price moving 1.8%, the power of 10x leverage. And then this guy, I think I had to wait. Until 3 p.m. So I did not get this at the optimal time. I believe I got this right around here, 72.7, I believe. So there was a period of time during that trade on Wednesday where I was in loss, not significant loss. God, I hate when it does this. Not significant loss, only like 1.2, 1.3%. So not enough for me to stress out. And when I'm thinking about my take profit stop losses that I'm setting those based on structure. So at the time I had my stop loss set for 75, because that would have been a break of structure. We would have been higher than the 4-hour Bollinger Band, and therefore possibly price could continue to go against me. So I was comfortable losing up to 2.5% on that trade because I was more confident that we were going to go down. Now I did close it once we had an interaction with that downtrend anchored VWAP, and we touched this. I think I closed at 70.7, something like that. So somewhere in here I closed it, just so one, I had already been in that trade for so long. I think I waited all night for that one, to be honest. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning when I closed that trade finally. And I knew that I was going to come into, so for Los Angeles time, it's 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. New York time, it's 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. During that time, those are the overnight hours, and therefore you need your full margin in order to be able to stay in the trade. Therefore, meaning all of your trades, effectively, if they were 10x, you now need to have the money for them as if they were 3.3x, just to hold them through that overnight window, and then it goes right back to only being whatever you need for 10x leverage, which at the moment, contracts should be $70 or $73. Well, actually, technically $68 now, because it's a nano BTC, so it's whatever, like 1% of it. I don't know the exact math, doesn't matter. Yes, this trade would have been considerably better had I stayed in it. But again, I'm starting off this account with $100, and I think I'm up to like $150. So it won't be long before I can have one contract sit through this. But in general, as I said, I'm looking for either a Fibonacci pivot or an SMA interaction to close trades. And me, quite frankly, I think I would rather close trades earlier and not have to continue watching the chart forever, because there will always be another setup. I keep arguing with ChatGPT about this because it's like, oh, your Bitcoin strategy is very risky. I'm not sure if you should do it. Or, I'm specifically looking for the 4-hour entries. And that's it. That's all that I'm looking for. And then I'm just using the Fibonacci pivots and the SMAs essentially as closing criteria. Because in this one, for example, we close strongly below the weekly SMA. And I guess in this instance, we actually showed kind of consolidation and then strength through that Fibonacci pivot. But, that would have been, this is at midnight already that it went there. And I would have had to stay up all the way through the London hours until like 8 o'clock in the morning before I got confirmation the next day of it hitting that other target. So in a perfect world, yeah, you ride it from one end of the Bollinger Band to the other, but you need to have the capital for that, which again, not a big deal in spot. and not a big deal if you're only choosing to trade the 3.3x, 4.3x leverage contracts. You just need more capital. So if you have about $1,000 in your trading account, then it'll be like $300 worth of contracts is what you're actually allowed to trade and hold during overnight periods. And that's really the key, is you'll get stopped out of a trade like this because you can't hold through the overnight if you don't have enough cash. This is a very important lesson that I've been learning. Again, and I don't mind. Like, I have the money to put more in. I would like to grow it to like 1,000-ish before I put more in. That might be a lie. I might put another 100 or 200 in just to make it go a little quicker. Because like even yesterday's trade, that was a 23% profit, I believe. And I made whatever, like $16, you know. So pretty great for $16 on a $73 contract. That's still very good. 23% is great. But again, it would have been closer to 70% had I had the capital to wait through those hours. And again, that would have been an extra, 16 hours, almost a full day that I would have had to wait from that point. Almost exactly, yeah. Because it's about 11 now and I closed the trade at 11 yesterday. So there are instances, and my strategy for this, what I'm trying to focus on is like, I would like to get to the point where I can have multiple contracts, which again is not complicated. If you have $1,000, you already can do this. But I would be taking as many contracts as I can outside of the 4-hour Bollinger Band. And then I would just be waiting until I get to about a 1%. Then I would take profit with a couple contracts so that I'm ready. You know, if I want to enter another trade, I'm ready. I have the capital. I also have more cash now that I could go through an overnight. And essentially, say that I buy 10 contracts here, I'm going to want to close like 3 of them at take profit 1, maybe another 3 of them at 2%. And then I'm going to leave the rest to run until there's a structural change. And then I have the choice of, you know, do I want to get rid of more contracts at the structural mark, which again, you know, having a ton of contracts to close at 2.5%, those are all going to close at 25% in profit. Again, on a 10x one, slightly less on a 3x one, but that's still whatever, like a 9% profit, which is very good, you know. So there's probably an argument, and so I'm sure some of you are much more proficient traders than I am. I'm mostly an analyst and a historian, but that's how I'm planning on scaling the trades. Is I'll take a couple take profits earlier on in the trend, because you know, if you have $1,000 at 10x leverage, then you only need the price to move 1% in order to make $100. And it's already at the point very quickly that I'm going to be able to compete with my income of my job if I have only $1,000 or $2,000 in the account, which is crazy. And it's very easy, I think, to get liquidated. And this has been my experience in the past with other trading strategies. You know, I've tried Phantom Wallet. I've, you know, trading meme coins and copy trading other people who are very successful. I've tried option contracts. Like, I was focused on that for most of last year, trying to time the IBIT contracts while studying Bitcoin. And I lost a bunch of money doing that. It just does not work as well as this works. I don't have to look at any other charts anymore. All I have to look at is the Bitcoin chart, and all I have to trade is the Nano BTC perpetual futures contracts. And I don't care if the price is going up or down. Like, I'm fucking stoked about this, if you can't tell, you know. So for me, I closed it there just because, again, I have a limited amount of capital in the account at the moment, and would just like to, you know, continue to learn the basics before. You got to think again, at that point, that's like almost 3 days in that trade that you're sitting there and waiting. And again, I was only in a period of loss for whatever, like a couple hours. And then I was just in continuous profit from that point. I think it's a stronger psychological pivot if you have, you know, multiple contracts that you're able to buy. So in this instance, you know, $700 would have got you 10 contracts, or $730 technically. And yeah, like, you would have had more than enough contracts to take a couple off the table early, let a couple run, close a couple more just in case. And then potentially even, and this is the part of the strategy that I haven't really adapted yet. This again is the downtrend anchored VWAP. So it is important. It's not as important as the Fibonacci's or the SMA, but it is very important the same way that this middle band was very important. It's not enough to tell us, you know, the price is going to stop there. Sometimes it gets very close to it. Like, in here it's very close to it, and here it's very close to it. That was huge for indicating momentum. But that's how I use the anchored VWAP, is it's an indication of momentum, not necessarily data for a close. And again, I closed like right here because we were showing some strength above this Fibonacci pivot, and I just didn't want to wait for another day before I could trade that. And again, for anyone who has already a decent money in the account, you don't have to worry about that. You would just want to pay attention to, okay, well, momentum is downside from this anchored VWAP at the moment. And again, if you have questions about what the fuck I'm talking about, please leave a comment down below. If you're still listening at this point in the video, you're great. Like and subscribe. That's what we're looking for at the moment, is we saw some negative momentum off of this downtrend anchored VWAP, but we did touch that downtrend anchored VWAP, which means we're going to retest it again. And I would imagine we have more strength on the upside. So again, me personally, what I'm looking for my next long entry is probably somewhere between 66 and 67. Really, I'm just going to wait for a Bollinger Band interaction. And if I don't get it, I don't get it. I probably will take a long regardless. But again, those are what I'm looking for clear entries. Like this guy, for example, is inside of the Bollinger Band, but probably would have been enough for me to send along, the same way that I had to rebuy this one here. And I believe, like I said, I bought this one like in here. So not the optimal times. Like I did not buy these contracts at the best times. The only way you can buy them at the best times is if you actually have enough money to hold it through the overnight hours, which again is not really that much money. It's like $230 per contract if you are buying it at 3.3x leverage, or technically again it's slightly lower now. It's basically the price, but like it's at 68,200 right now, so it should be $68.02 to buy one of the 10x leverage contracts. But yeah, that's pretty much it at the moment. I am expecting it to continue to go lower until it has an interaction with the 4-hour Bollinger Band bottom. And then the Bollinger Band is going to tell me, are we going to get one of these where it slopes down and opens up and there's room for expansion, and the price will probably continue up at that time, or is it going to pull us down? And that will purely come to a reaction to the Fibonacci pivot, which is why, like I said, I would imagine we're either going to show strength off of the Bollinger Band, which is not as guaranteed, same thing as an anchored VWAP. It really tells us more about momentum than it does about actual key levels. The key levels, I would say, are more the SMA and the Fibonacci pivots. Those are going to give us more clear indication of, okay, I got to get out of this trade, or, oh, I got to add to this trade. And again, I don't have my rules set for adding to trades. I would prefer to buy all of them when we are in these 4-hour breaks. But even in an instance where, say, I unloaded a bunch of money here into shorts, I would have been very much out of profit for a period of time. Fuck you, sticky keys. That's not what I'm trying to do. Yeah, 3.4. So not quite at liquidation. Liquidation is at 8% for 10x leverage contracts, but you would have lost 50% of your money if you panicked at this point, which I don't think I'm that worried about it, honestly, because we're not talking about, this is an asset that moves at most 8 to 16% in a day, and it does not move that much most days. Most days it moves considerably less than that. Like this is our biggest candle recently. That's a 14% day. This is a 7% day, 5% day, 5% day. Most times it's much less volatile than that, even on the very volatile ones. Those are 5% candles. That's a 7% candle. So most instances, and those are daily candles, so most instances you're not going to get stopped out unless you just absolutely are the worst at taking entries. And like I already set the rules of like how I'm doing it. You can do whatever the hell you want. I'm just telling you this works so far. Again, not financial advice, but if you're someone who's been struggling to find some type of profitable trading strategy and you only want to look at the Bitcoin chart, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going to continue to talk about on the channel and in my membership group, which I'll have more information about soon for you. And again, if you want to join the Discord, you can hit me up on Threads or Instagram, or technically you can email me I'm just not giving it out via social media without direct interaction with people, because I don't want to waste people's time. I want only serious individuals to be in the Discord. So at the moment, that's what I'm looking for a long entry next, is some interaction around 66, 67K. And then I will go long to the upside. And that one, I would imagine, now that I can buy 2 contracts, big spender, I'll probably close one and let the other one ride if I have enough cash in the account by that time. We'll see. And yeah, I would be paying attention then to this downtrend anchor VWAP. 71.1K is currently where it is, which is slightly above this 70.75K Fibonacci pivot. So we just want to see momentum on our way up there. Can we get back above this trend line, at 68.2K? And then can we get back to the SMA at 70.6K? And this older pivot of 70.2, I think, is also going to be important. So really, just over the next, 4 hours, I would imagine, again, we got now 22 minutes until this candle closes. So I don't think it's going to be in this candle, but it could quite possibly be later on today that we see this interaction. So keep an eye on the charts. And that's what I would be looking for next, again, is I would expect a long entry from there, as opposed to a more sustained breakdown to 58 again. If we just look at the structure of the chart again real quick, it would depend on where we close the week. So if we continue strength at that 67, K now, which currently our low is at 65.2, and this guy, where's the bottom of the candle? 65.9, it looks like. We don't want to go back down there for the rest of the week. We want to continue bullish momentum for the rest of the week. If we can get above that 50% mark of this range, that'll allow us to reclaim the daily. And again, the daily, this is super important today, 67.7K. If we can close above that, and ideally above 68.7K, that's going to give us a little bit of room to run higher. But as you can see, the daily, this is a clear short entry. We just don't know, based on the daily SMA, if it's going to break back through it, which most instances recently, that has been what's happened when it touches it. But you can see right here, it wicked to it and stayed up. So I think it's going to be more likely this guy at the moment, but the daily SMA is flipping downward. So there's quite a possibility that we just break lower and everything I said about a long entry is wrong on the 4 hour. But, even in this instance, even if we go down lower here, that was still a great long. That was still a very good trade. Come on, work. That would be a 150% trade if you were in a 10x leverage contract, and it would have been whatever, like 6-7 days that you were in it, 5 to 6 days that you were in it. So as long as you have the money to go through the overnight, this is a very, very powerful way to trade while continuing to DCA and not be stressed about whether Bitcoin goes up or down. Again, I am so excited that I discovered this. I wish somebody told me when I was going viral on Threads in July last year. That's when these perpetual contracts became available, and nobody told me shit. I wish I had known. I wouldn't have been trading anything else. So that's what I want you to focus on right now. I'll have an update for it on Sunday. And again, in the Discord, I will continue to give trade updates on Threads and Instagram and Facebook. I kind of just give recaps more than anything, as opposed to when I'm actually in them. But that's what I'm looking for at the moment, a reaction to 67K. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. I'll see you in the next one on Sunday. Have a great day, everybody.